It appears that, in my opinion, economies around the world are wanting to boost their own situation currently. I noticed that after the inauguration, Lisa Su of AMD, Mama Su, that's basically what the nerds on the AMD side would call her. She's in charge of AMD, just like you have the gentleman in charge of Nvidia. She congratulated the president on becoming president and all that, with the looking forward to doing business with you level speech and all of the above. Now, if you know what the economy, kind of looks like with different administrations, you'll know that in the previous administration of Trump, it was very pro-business. Now, whatever you think about Trump, that's none of my business. I hate politics. You all know that. However, I remember one very interesting tidbit that happened during 2017 when the administration at the time, Trump's administration and Congress, gave businesses a discount. Let me explain that discount. They told businesses, if you go bring money from offshore accounts back into the U.S., we'll reduce your tax burden very significantly. And you have so-and-so date to execute on it. And then after that, it's already going to go back to the default state. Now, during that time, an analyst, I think it was on CNN or MSNBC Money or so, actually came out and said that they looked through Microsoft's, expenses when they were looking at the quarterly statement and found out that somewhere, somehow, they made a huge payment that they called something along the lines of tax. It was like a tax bill that they wrote a check for to the IRS. This led them to believe that Microsoft had brought money into the country sitting in its offshore accounts. 2017 passes, 2018, nothing happens. Around that time, we start hearing rumors that it appears that, Microsoft might be shopping around to try to buy Warner Brothers. Remember, that got then confirmed in an email where apparently Phil Spencer was talking to other executives about possibly acquiring Warner Brothers, but he, dialed back from there because Phil Spencer prefers to have IPs, prefers to have properties that are actually owned by Microsoft exclusively, if possible. He's what I call an entrepreneur in a sense. He likes that ownership piece, which is good. It actually has been the one thing that has basically conquered PlayStation and exposed their pillar of exclusivity. What I mean by this is simply the fact that if, say, maybe you go look at, PlayStation's, games that it's been bringing on its platforms, right? Many of them have been timed exclusive games. They're for other studios. They're not PlayStation's IPs. But PlayStation was able to pay for a temporary, launch on their platform, and then eventually they're going back. However, with Phil, those kinds of games are quite the minimum in the grand scheme of things. Now that these companies are backing away from that, everyone is now exposed as to what do you actually have? What IPs do you have, and how valuable are they? We can talk about that later. All that introduction to say, and this is not something that I'm, anywhere an expert on, and I don't care to be. Jez reports that the UK CMA chair that forced Microsoft to give Activision Cloud gaming rights to Ubisoft has been ousted by the government. Now, I'm not sitting here rejoicing because it's not like Microsoft was suffering. I'm not going to sit here and be an apologist for a big company. However, I remember we followed that whole situation. Do you all remember when the CMA sat in front of its legislators, some of the people from the CMA, and they were asking them questions back and forth? And it seemed like those legislators did not have enough confidence in the decisions that they were making. It seemed like there was some kind of an agenda that was behind it. And, the legislators, they were just being gentlemen and gentleladies about the whole thing. They just kind of, all politicized their way around it. Everything was kind of softball in a sense. Whenever they'd press a little hard, they'd back away. And I remember thinking to myself, if I was sitting in any of those positions, none of these folk that were in the regulatory bodies could convince me that there was a big issue in holding back Microsoft or making them meet these above and beyond requirements to acquire Activision, because as everybody knew, they were basically the underdog in the whole console race. Well, in the console race they were. So at the end of the day, it's just very interesting to see how immediately we have a change in administration. Somewhere, somehow, the UK is looking out for economic possibilities. And the reason that they actually ousted this person, they simply said, failing to promote growth. Because one thing about business is, the areas of business, especially in different capitalistic societies, and I know some people may hate capitalism, there are bad aspects to any system. Doesn't matter what system you try to pull out there. I'm not old, but I've looked around long enough. I've read some history books and watched a few YouTube videos as well to know that whichever system you have to actually put in place, the human condition is going to go out there and just corrupt that system on your behalf. There's nothing you can really do about it. And I think that's basically the piece of the puzzle is in this kind of a society and this kind of an economy, the drive for economic growth is something that for the most part, if a country can leverage and properly supervise, this is not to say let these, companies go crazy because they can start to harm their own customers or gouge or become monopolies and become problematic. You can see the benefits out there. And I think the UK was at that time on the verge of signaling to big businesses that we are not opening for business, because there was also another big merger that kind of got pushed back as well. I don't know if it was from another regulatory body. And what's crazy is the EU didn't seem to have any problem. They just asked their questions. Once their, requirements were met, they said everything is good and everything is fine. Brazil, its economic defense, ministry said everything was fine. In China, in the Middle East, the big regulatory bodies did not cause too much of a problem. It was only the CMA and the FTC that were causing issues, of which we, had always suspected. And it seemed like the FTC chair was more in there for their own, reputation that, we kind of slowed down this big company or whatever it is. So at the end of the day, I think this whole matter has just been really weird. And again, as our FTC chair is bouncing, UK is also switching out theirs. And to me, I just think it's almost too convenient. But the only conclusion I can draw is it seems like now they want to signal that anybody who wants to come in to do business, we're going to be willing to talk to you, because the world is in a very strange place. And these companies, they're sitting on cash that can stimulate economies if the right decisions are made with the right intentions, the right execution, and good integrity. Those are the main things. Don't go, don't say they're going to give this companies a free reign. They're going to run all over the place. Nah, you gotta watch and keep an eye on them. But jobs have got to be created. Opportunities have got to be created. And these opportunities are created when the money leaves their bank accounts, because they're going to be taking significant risks. But that's what you need, I think. So looking at all of this from a gamer's perspective, I'm of the mind that, if Microsoft and if Sony and these big companies are able to tap into the markets where there's friendly ground for them, they have an opportunity these next few years to be able to establish themselves and really take some serious risks. Everything's not going to look like this. We don't even know how the next 4 years is going to be. We just came down from 4 years of COVID, and then all of this 4 years after COVID, pre-COVID, all this stuff has just been so weird. It's like the world has changed in multiple cycles in such a short period of time. All of this has happened basically under a decade. It's just so wild. So I foresee Nintendo, I foresee Microsoft, I foresee PlayStation, Sony anyways, all making some really strong moves, especially now. It's almost no coincidence that the Switch 2 is coming out pretty soon. I strongly believe that console could have come out at any time. And that's just my opinion anyways. I just believe that it could have come out at any time. But these companies, and I'm not saying that they orchestrated it. I'm just saying that they probably were kind of watching and taking their time, because you need a healthy economy to sell a console like the Switch. It's a very different kind of console, because you're going to be selling it for for multiple targeted audiences, but the people who can pay for it are basically one demographic in a sense. It's weird. Parents can pay for it for their children, so you got to make sure that the parents have enough expendable income and are interested enough to buy Switches for their kids. Some households buy multiple Switches, not just one. They'll buy it, they'll buy like $1,000 or $2,000 worth of Nintendo Switch consoles, right? So again, Nintendo understands, and this is just interesting to see, all across the board, that these companies are very aware of what their market is, and their strategies are usually based on, the way economic policy is either hostile or friendly to them. All right, that's enough for me. Talk to me in the comment section. Let me hear your thoughts, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.